COVID case numbers have appeared to stabilise in New South Wales, with some epidemiologists saying the peak has passed. But things are continuing to worsen in Victoria, with another big rise in cases in the past 24 hours. Norman Swan, the presenter of RN Health Report and the ABC's very popular Corona Cast, joins us now from Sydney. Good morning, Norman.
Hi, Lisa.
So what's going on with Victoria? Because we've certainly had the tough lockdown measures, but we're not seeming to turn the corner yet.
Well, there are three things going on in Victoria. One is obviously the Delta, which is more contagious. The second is the mobility, and it's not much different in Victoria from New South Wales, but mobility is less than previous lockdowns. I think there's further news today about that. It's just really hard to maintain the sort of lockdown that Victorians did in previous waves and outbreaks. And that's making a difference when you've got Delta along. There's no room for there's no margin for error here. And then the third element here in terms of control, the other thing is that once you've got large numbers, your contact tracing starts to fall apart. It's just not as good as it used to be, so that your control mechanism isn't there. It'd be much worse without that. It would be much worse without testing. And then the third, of course, is vaccination, which you hope to be bending the curve. And the reproduction rate the other day was 1.7, which means a very high rate of increase when you get to the sort of numbers you're at today. You could be at 1,000, Victorians could be at 1,000 within 8 days if it keeps at that reproduction rate.
And while we're on the topic, New South Wales, we just had Raina McIntyre on suggesting that she believes case numbers could still be in the thousands, even when Sydney gets to 70 and 80% double-dose vaccination. She's worried about the impact on the health system. How do you see the situation at the moment, Norman, in Sydney in particular, and how it's playing out?
Well, it's hard to find an epidemiologist who thinks it's a good idea to open up at 70%, albeit in a relatively careful way. Outdoors is relatively okay, but when you're starting to say bars and restaurants are going to open to vaccinated, once you do that, it's going to be very hard. I mean, we've got a problem with mobility and lockdown in New South Wales as well. It's not Victoria, it's exclusive to Victoria. And once you start relaxing that, it's going to be very hard to police lockdown overall. And therefore, you will probably see a surge at 70%. Remember, at 70% of the 16-year-olds and above, it's only 56% of the whole population. That means 40% of people are unvaccinated. That's not necessarily the hesitant, that's just maybe people who just can't get to be vaccinated, Aboriginal communities and others. And that's a lot of people who could be infected who aren't yet infected. And contact tracing is overwhelmed in New South Wales as well. So it's a precarious situation. Tonight on 7:30, I'm looking at Denmark, who've opened up just in the last few days at 80% of the whole population. They're not immunising young children, but over 12s, they've done really, really well. And they're doing that with some nervousness, but they've literally opened up with no restrictions at all. They've even got rid of their vaccine passports, and they're just looking to see what will happen there. And various countries have done it in different ways, but 70% is risky.
Hey, what's happening with this move by South Australia and the Northern Territory to offer Pfizer to the over-60s? What does that mean with the messaging we're hearing?
This is boomer entitlement. I mean, it's just, it must mean that they've got loads of Pfizer doses that they're not telling anybody about. If they've got Pfizer doses to waste on over 60-year-olds, when 12-year-olds need to be immunised, 12-year-olds should be in front of any 60-year-old who isn't otherwise contraindicated to get AstraZeneca, because they deserve the Pfizer more than over 60s. Over 60s can get Astra safely and protect themselves against severe disease. Pfizer should be reserved for the under 60s and now the 12 to 15-year-olds. They must have stocks of Pfizer they haven't told anybody about. They can afford to do that.
But once that mindset is established, and it appears to be established in some sections of the over-60s population, Norman, it's very hard to change, isn't it?
It's very hard to change, and they will be vulnerable when we do open up. And in states where they're not opening up, it will keep them locked down for longer.
Norman Swan, it's always great to have you on the program. Thank you.
You're welcome. No boomers will talk to me from now on.
I was going to say, pretty punchy. I love it when you're punchy, Norman.